Mechanical engineering is an engineering branch that combines engineering physics and mathematics principles with material science to design, analyze, manufacture, and maintain mechanical systems. It is one of the oldest and broadest of the engineering branches. The mechanical engineering field requires an understanding of core areas including mechanics, dynamics, thermodynamics, material science, structural analysis, and electricity. Today, mechanical engineers are pursuing development in such areas as such composites, mechatronics, and nanotechnology. It also overlaps with aerospace engineering, metallurgical engineering, civil engineering, electrical, manufacturing, chemical, industrial, and other engineering disciplines. In this section, we will deal with certain important questions pertaining to basic mechanical engineering. As such, what is torque? What is latent heat? What is limiting friction? What are manometers? And many more. Explain the term torque. Torque is the measure of the force that can cause an object to rotate about an axis. Force is what causes an object to accelerate in linear kinematics. Similarly, torque is what causes an angular acceleration. Hence, torque can be defined as the rotational equivalent of linear force. The perfect answer for this particular question would be a force that causes rotation is called torque. It is a measure of how much force is required to rotate an object. Define the term latent heat. Latent heat, which is also known as latent energy or heat of transformation, is the energy released or absorbed by a body or a thermodynamic system during a constant temperature process or an isothermal process. The perfect answer for this particular question would be it is an amount of heat that changes the property of material without increasing its temperature any further. What do you understand by dimensional analysis? In engineering and science, dimensional analysis is the analysis of the relationships between different physical quantities. By identifying their base quantities and unit of measure and tracking these dimensions as calculations or comparisons. The perfect answer for this question would be dimensional analysis is the mathematics of dimensions and quantities and provides procedural techniques whereby the variables that are assumed to be significant in a problem can be formed into dimensionless parameters, the number of parameters being less than the number of variables. State Archimedes' principle. Archimedes' principle states that an object immersed in a fluid experiences a buoyant force that is equal in magnitude to the force of gravity on the displaced fluid. The perfect answer for this particular question would be: any weight floating or immersed in a liquid is acted upon by a buoyant force equal to the weight of the liquid displaced. This force acts through the center of buoyancy of the displaced liquid. What is limiting friction? The maximum friction that can be generated between two static surfaces in contact with each other is what we call a limiting friction. Once a force applied to the two surfaces exceeds the limiting friction, motion will occur. For two dry surfaces, the limiting friction is a product of the normal reaction force and the coefficient of limiting friction. The perfect answer for this particular question would be: when an object is sliding over another object, frictional force is developed in the contact surface. This friction force creates a resistance. The maximum value of this particular frictional force is called the limiting friction. What are manometers? A manometer is a device to measure pressure. The perfect answer for this particular question would be: they are pressure measuring devices for liquids. To measure the pressure in a point in the liquid, manometer balances a liquid column. What is the importance of tolerance in engineering? Engineering tolerance is the permissible variation in measurements deriving from the base measurements. The perfect answer for this particular question would be: you cannot design any product without tolerance. It increases the chances of rejection rate and overall product cost. You utilize tolerance in part dimension to reduce cost and facilitate the manufacturer. What is a universal coupling? A universal joint is a joint or coupling connecting rigid rods whose axes are inclined to each other and is commonly used in shafts that transmit rotary motion. It consists of a pair of hinges located close together, oriented at 90 degrees to each other, connected by a cross shaft. So the answer for this particular question would be: universal coupling is used to connect two shafts whose axes are inclined to each other. It consists of a pair of hinges connected by a cross shaft. What does angular momentum mean? In physics, angular momentum is the rotational equivalent of linear momentum. It is an important quantity in physics because it is a conserved quantity. The total angular momentum of a closed system remains constant. And this is what the conservation of angular momentum theory is. So the answer to this particular question would be: angular momentum is an expression of an object mass and rotational speed. Momentum is the velocity of an object times its mass, or how fast something is moving, how much it weighs. Therefore, angular momentum is the object's mass times the angular velocity, where angular velocity is how fast something is rotating, expressed in terms like RPS or revolution per minute or revolution per second. What is spring constant? The spring constant, which is denoted by K, is the representative of how stiff the spring is. The displacement of an object is a distance measurement that describes that change from the normal or equilibrium position. The perfect answer for this question would be spring constant, which is denoted by K, is given by minus F by X. Here F is the force and X is the displacement. The unit of the spring constant is Newton per meter. Every spring has its own spring constant, which is a measure of its stiffness and strength. Explain different types of fits. The types of fits depend upon the actual limit of the hole or shaft. This can be divided into three categories: clearance fit, interference fit, and transition fit. So the answer for this question would be, there are three categories of fits. First is clearance fit. In this kind of fits, the hole is larger than the shaft, enabling the two parts to slide or rotate when assembled. The example for such kind of fit would be pistons and valves. Another kind of fit is the transition fit. Here the hole is fractionally smaller than the shaft, and mild force is required to assemble or disassemble. The example of such kind of fit would be a shaft key. And last but not the least, we have interference fit. Here the hole is smaller than the shaft, and high force or heat is required to assemble or disassemble. The example of such interference fit would be a bearing bush. Why gas containers are mostly cylindrical in shape? Gas bottles are cylindrical or spherical because circular hoops can withstand internal pressure by pure tension present in the tank material. If the shape were not circular, then there would be bending stresses in the tank wall and it would not be able to withstand as much pressure without breaking. The answer for this particular question would be, the most efficient shape for withstanding high pressure is a sphere, which would be costly to manufacture. A cylinder with a domed top and bottom is a much cheaper shape to manufacture, while still having good strength to resist the internal gas pressure.